The fluorescent lights of the supermarket buzzed faintly overhead, casting a sterile glow over the aisles. Evening rush hour had filled the place with hurried shoppers. Parents grabbing dinner. Workers picking up last-minute groceries, children tugging at candy displays. Amidst the noise, a young woman stood quietly at the checkout counter, her arms aching from holding her baby against her chest. Her basket was painfully light. A tin of baby formula. A small pack of diapers, of bread, nothing extra, nothing indulgent, just survival. She clutched the items as if they were treasures, knowing each one meant another day she could care for her child. Her baby, barely a year old, squirmed restlessly in her arms, fussing with soft whimpers that tugged at her heart. The cashier scanned the items without looking up, chewing gum indifferently. "That'll be $32, she said flatly. The young mother's fingers trembled as she pulled a worn debit card from her wallet. The card's edges were frayed, the numbers fading from years of overuse. She slid it across, silently praying it would go through this time. Her stomach knotted as the machine beeped once, then flashed red. "Decolini." The cashier sighed loudly, pushing the card back across the counter as if it were contaminated. "Do you have another form of payment?" she asked, her tone laced with impatience. Behind the mother, the line of shoppers shifted, their irritation palpable. A man in a suit checked his watch and muttered something under his breath. A teenager with headphones rolled her eyes dramatically. Someone sighed loudly, as if 30 seconds of waiting was unbearable. The mother swallowed hard. "Please, can you try again?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. The cashier tapped the machine with exaggerated annoyance. "It won't work. Do you have cash?" The young mother opened her wallet, knowing what she'd find: a few crumpled bills, some loose coins, not even enough to cover half of the formula. She bit her lip, her eyes stinging. Her baby began to fuss louder now, picking up on her tension. She rocked him gently, whispering, "It's okay baby, mommy's here." But inside, she felt herself breaking. "Mom, if you can't pay, I'll need to set these items aside," the cashier said, already reaching for the formula tin. The mother's hands tightened protectively around it. "Please," she begged softly, her voice cracking. "It's for my baby. He needs this." The baby let out a wail, his tiny fists clenching. The sound pierced through the store, but instead of empathy, it drew more impatient glances. A woman further back in line sighed and whispered to her companion, "Some people really shouldn't have kids if they can't afford them." The words hit the young mother like a dagger. Her cheeks burned red, and she lowered her head, ashamed, wishing she could disappear. She wasn't lazy, she wasn't careless. She was just struggling, fighting every single day to keep her baby fed, clothed, and safe. But in that moment, under the judgmental stares of strangers, she felt utterly small. The cashier began sliding the items off the counter, one by one: the diapers, the bread, the formula, the most important of all. The young mother's breath caught in her throat. Her arms tightened around her baby as tears spilled freely down her cheeks. The rejection wasn't just about groceries. It was about dignity. It was about the crushing weight of being powerless when your child depended on you. And in that cold, merciless moment, surrounded by people who turned their faces away, she felt truly alone. The mother's vision blurred with tears as the cashier stacked her items to the side like abandoned belongings. Her baby's cries grew louder, echoing in the crowded supermarket. She kissed his forehead, murmuring soft shushing sounds, though her own voice trembled. She fumbled with her wallet again, hoping, desperately, that perhaps she had overlooked a bill or a hidden coin. All she found were faded receipts and a few coins that clinked pathetically in her palm. She laid them out on the counter with shaking hands. 75 cents. The cashier announced dryly, not even hiding her disdain. "That won't even cover the bread." The young mother's throat tightened. She tried to force words out, to explain, to beg for more time. But nothing came. Behind her, the line grew restless. A man in a polo shirt groaned loudly. "Unbelievable. Some of us have places to be, you know." Another shopper, a woman with perfectly styled hair and a cart full of gourmet items, leaned closer to her friend and whispered just loud enough for the mother to hear, "If you can't afford a baby, maybe you shouldn't have one." The words cut deeper than any knife. Shame flushed across the mother's face, hot and humiliating. She pressed her baby closer to her chest, as if shielding him from the cruelty of the world. Her child didn't ask to be here. Didn't ask to grow up in hunger or hardship. This was her fight, not his. Her baby's small hand clutched at her collar, tears streaming down his red cheeks. His cry wasn't just noise. It was need, it was hunger. It was innocence demanding care. And yet, all around her, people's eyes judged, not pitied. The teenager in line behind the impatient man chuckled, shaking his head. She should have thought of that before having a kid. The young mother wanted to disappear into the ground. She wanted to scream back to tell them about the nights she skipped meals so her baby could eat, about the jobs she worked until exhaustion set her bones on fire. But instead, she stayed silent. Her pride was already in tatters, arguing would only shred what little remained. The cashier shrugged, clearly eager to move on. She called out to the next customer. "Sir, come forward please." As though the struggling mother and her child were nothing more than an inconvenience to clear out of the way. The young mother's knees wobbled. She thought of leaving everything behind, of walking out with empty hands and a heavy heart. But the thought of her baby going hungry made her clutch the formula tighter. Her tears falling onto the baby's soft hair. Every second that passed felt like the world was pushing her deeper into the ground, crushing her spirit under its weight. And yet, in the sea of indifference and cruelty, just when it seemed like no one would care, footsteps echoed behind her, firm and deliberate. Someone was stepping forward. The impatient chatter in the checkout line rattled around her like cold stones thrown from every direction. The mother stood frozen, clutching the formula tin with both hands, her baby's cries muffled against her chest. The cashier had already begun scanning the next customer's items, shoving her little pile of groceries aside, as if they were worthless. Just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, a voice cut through the noise. "Calm. Steady. Firm. I'll take care of it." The words carried such weight that the entire line seemed to pause. Heads turned. The cashier froze mid-scan, blinking up in confusion. Even the impatient man checking his watch stopped tacking his foot. A tall figure stepped forward from a few places down the line. His tailored suit clung perfectly to broad shoulders. The kind of attire that belonged in boardrooms and luxury cars, not in the fluorescent, lit aisles of a neighborhood supermarket. His shoes clicked with precision against the linoleum floor as he approached. Every movement deliberate. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black card. One so exclusive that most people in the room had only ever heard of it, never seen it. With quiet authority, he placed it on the counter in front of the stunned cashier. "Run the total again," he instructed, his voice calm but commanding. "And this time, put everything back in her basket." The cashier hesitated, glancing at him nervously. His presence was unlike anything she'd encountered at her register. An aura of confidence and wealth that made her swallow her gum. Oh, of course sir," she stammered, quickly grabbing the mother's items and scanning them again. The mother blinked through her tears, stunned. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She didn't know this man. She didn't know why he was helping her. For a moment, she thought perhaps she was imagining it. A cruel dream of kindness in the midst of humiliation. But then he turned to her, his eyes meeting hers. They weren't cold or pitying like the others. They were steady, warm, understanding. "You don't need to cry anymore," he said gently, his voice meant only for her despite the crowd watching. "Your baby will eat tonight." Her knees nearly gave out from the flood of relief that surged through her. She gripped the counter to steady herself, whispering, I don't know how to thank you." He gave a small smile, one that softened the hard lines of his face. "No thanks needed. Just hold on to your child." The murmurs around them shifted. Where moments ago there had been ridicule, now there was stunned silence. Some people looked ashamed of their earlier cruelty. Others whispered curiously, eyes darting between the man's tailored suit and the black card now swiping successfully through the machine. The baby, as if sensing the change, quieted down, his cries fading into soft hiccups. He clung to his mother's shirt with tiny fists, blinking up at the stranger who had stepped in like a guardian from nowhere. The receipt printed. The cashier, suddenly polite, handed over the bagged groceries with both hands. "Everything's covered, ma'am," she said quickly, her earlier harshness gone. The mother clutched the bag to her chest, still trembling. She didn't just feel gratitude. She felt something deeper. A flicker of hope after weeks of relentless struggle. And as the stranger picked up one of the heavier bags himself, offering to walk with her to the exit, the store's onlookers remained silent, their eyes following them. None dared to speak, for they all knew, something extraordinary had just happened. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, releasing them into the cool night air. The supermarket's fluorescent glow faded behind them, replaced by the quiet hum of crickets, and the faint glow of streetlights. The mother hugged her bag of groceries close to her chest, as though someone might snatch it away. The formula tin inside weighed heavier than gold in her heart. Her baby had calmed. Now resting against her shoulder with tired hiccups, his small breaths warm against her neck. Beside her, the suited stranger carried the second bag, with an ease that contrasted the heaviness in her arms. His stride was purposeful but not hurried. He walked not ahead of her, not behind her but beside her, like an equal. For a long moment the mother stayed silent, her mind swirling with disbelief. She wanted to thank him. To explain, to tell him she wasn't irresponsible, just struggling. But her throat caught every time she tried to form words. Finally, she whispered. Why did you do that for me?" Her voice cracked. The weight of her shame and gratitude colliding in every syllable. He stopped walking and turned toward her. In the glow of the streetlight, she could see him more clearly. Sharp features softened by compassion. Eyes that carried something more than wealth. Something lived, something human. "No mother," he said softly, his voice steady and low, "should feel ashamed for trying to feed her child." Her lips trembled. Tears pooled again, but these tears were different. Not from humiliation, but from the unfamiliar warmth of being seen, understood. I didn't want anyone to help me," she admitted, lowering her gaze to the sidewalk. I just couldn't let him go hungry tonight." She kissed her baby's head, her voice breaking. "I've been trying so hard. I'm not a bad mother." He bent slightly, lowering himself to her level, not towering above her, but meeting her where she was. His tone softened even more. "You are not a bad mother. You are exactly the kind of mother a child needs, strong, sacrificing, brave." Her tears spilled freely now. For weeks she had carried her battles alone, hearing only judgment from others. To have someone, a stranger, speak to her with such sincerity felt like balm on a raw wound. She looked at him then, searching his face. There was something in his expression, a flicker of memory in his eyes. As though her struggle stirred something personal within him. "You don't know me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "So why me?" He smiled faintly. Not the polished smile of a businessman but the soft, almost vulnerable smile of someone remembering another lifetime. "Because once," he said, his gaze distant for a moment, "I stood exactly where you are now. Empty pockets, a hungry stomach. And someone saw me. They chose to help me. If they hadn't, I don't know where I would be today." His eyes returned to hers, steady and certain. "I'm just passing that kindness forward." Her heart clenched. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. The baby stirred in her arms, lifting his head just enough to look at the man. His tiny fist uncurled, reaching out instinctively. The man extended a single finger, and the baby grasped it tightly. The sight made the mother's chest ache with a strange, overwhelming hope. She whispered again. This time with genuine strength, thank you for seeing me." And though he gave no grand reply, the look in his eyes, gentle, unwavering, was answer enough. The night air carried a faint chill as they reached the edge of the parking lot. The glow of the supermarket faded behind them, replaced by the muted hum of traffic passing on the nearby street. The mother adjusted her baby in her arms, still half afraid this moment would vanish like a dream. She clutched the bag of groceries as though it were life itself. The baby formula nestled inside meant more than anyone else in that store could ever understand. For tonight, her child would not go to bed hungry. That was all that mattered. Or at least, it had been all that mattered, until this stranger appeared and changed everything. They stopped near the curb. The suited man shifted the bag in his hand effortlessly and looked at her. "Do you have a way home?" he asked gently. "Yes." She nodded quickly, almost too quickly. She didn't want to sound like she was asking for more. "It's just a bus ride. We'll be fine." He studied her for a moment. as though weighing something in his mind. Then, behind him, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb, its polished surface gleaming under the streetlight. A uniformed driver stepped out, hurrying to open the rear door. The mother froze, her eyes widening. She had thought him just a kind stranger. The whispers was something else entirely. The whispers from inside the supermarket now made sense. The suit, the commanding presence. The effortless way the cashier had obeyed, her voice trembled. Who are you?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket, and pulled out a simple, embossed card. He held it out to her, his eyes steady. "If you ever find yourself needing more than tonight's groceries," he said softly, "call this number." She hesitated, then accepted the card with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the letters. Her breath caught. It wasn't just a name, it was the name. A CEO she had seen in headlines, the kind of man whose face appeared on magazine covers, a man people whispered about with awe. His company was a towering empire, one of the biggest in the city. She looked up at him stunned. "You're..." "Yes," he said, cutting her off gently, his expression unreadable but kind. "But tonight? That doesn't matter. Tonight, I'm just someone who believes in you." Her baby cooed softly then, as if sensing the shift. The mother's eyes filled with tears again. But these were not the bitter tears of humiliation. They were tears of possibility, of hope breaking through the cracks of despair. "Why me?" she whispered again, almost afraid of the answer. "Because you didn't give up," he replied firmly. "Even when everyone around you tried to shame you, you held on. A person who fights for their child like that." He paused, his eyes softening. "That's the kind of person I want on my side. If you ever need work, or a fresh start, come to me. I believe in people who don't quit." She pressed the card to her chest, clutching it as tightly as she held her baby. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt the weight on her shoulders lighten. The baby let out a soft giggle, reaching a tiny hand toward the CEO as if to bless him with innocent gratitude. He chuckled quietly, touching the baby's fingers with surprising tenderness before stepping back toward his car. The driver closed the door after him, and the sleek vehicle pulled away into the night, leaving the mother standing on the curb. Bags of food in her hands, her child safe in her arms, and a card that might just change the course of their lives. For the first time in a long time, she smiled through her tears. Hope, once a stranger, now walked beside her.